If I've been known for anything in my career, it's buying, scaling, and selling businesses. So I'm going to give you some quick tips on how you can either buy a business, scale a business, or exit a business. In my career, over 125 exits so far and climbing. We have 27 companies now. I have 2 to 3 of them right now that are actually in potential for exit. So instead of teaching you philosophy today, I'm going to teach you a little bit more tactics because I really want you to understand the opportunity that's out there today. You have somewhere between 3 million and 15 million baby boomers leaving their place of business in the next 7 to 10 years. This is staggering. The number right now is that there are over 12 million baby boomers that own a mid-sized business or smaller, meaning that there is going to be some transition in leadership in the next 7 to 10 years. Mark my words. This is the wealth transfer that we're going through. Here's this person walks in and says, "Hey, I see your business is for sale. I'll make you a deal." Instead of me putting a bunch of money down, I'm going to actually set aside some money to run the practice, run this office that you have, and I'll give you a residual income for years to come up until we pay you $1 million. The dentist thinks about it, realizes it's the best play for legacy. It's the best play to avoid a big tax event by selling this business for $1 million cash. And he decides this might be the easiest thing, and because of the zeal of this person that's in his business, I'm going to sell it. This is how businesses are sold today. So many of them are not being purchased by SBA loans or cash. They're being owner financed because less than 2% of businesses are actually selling. So if they've sat on the market for long enough, the business owner is just frustrated. They don't know what to do. And that's what's happening all across America. The massive wealth transfer that's going to happen is going to happen just like that. And it may be an SBA loan that buys it. It might be equipment financing that buys it. There's a lot of different ways to buy a business, but this is how businesses are being sold today. And you are missing out on the gold rush if you are not purchasing or looking at these businesses. So you've got this business now, and what do? There are 5 pillars to every single business. This is where you actually have to start. The 5 pillars are leadership. Where am I going? What's the purpose of this business? What's the end destination? Next, it's operations. How do we functionally operate, right? Like, do we have a system? Can we replicate that system? Are we cross-training our people? Next is personnel. You have to know the strength of your personnel. Are the people that you've acquired people worth keeping? Can you help them along the way? If you've got a 75-year-old dentist in the chair, do you also have, a 75-year-old receptionist that's not really interested in staying much longer, right? Like, you have to understand the personnel. You have to understand finance. That's number 4, right? Finance. That's fundamentally, like, do you actually know your numbers? And lastly, we group sales and marketing together. If you understand these 5 pillars of business, then you understand the gaps that are in these businesses. And in those 5 pillars, you will find gaps in every business, and that is where you focus. So what I do is I have what's called fractional people, fractional positions that are already trained and ready to go. Under the Empire, let's say, consulting brand, I have fractional COOs. We have access to fractional CFOs, chief financial officers. We have fractional, by the way, COOs, chief operating officer. We have fractional CIOs, chief information officers, right? We have fractional CROs, chief revenue officers. And so what I do is I look at this business and I say, fundamentally, these are the gaps that I have. The biggest issue with the business is that then you have to determine how much revenue can it generate, right? And can it cover its own? Well, the problem is that oftentimes in those 5 pillars, I see a deficiency. And usually the way to overcome that deficiency is to hire somebody to jump in there. Well, the problem is I want to hire a rock star. I want to hire somebody at the highest level. But I don't necessarily want to pay $250,000 a year for that person. So what I have is I have a bunch of fractionals, and I will tap the shoulder of a fractional and say, hey, I need you in this business for the next 3 to 6 months. I can now afford it like the lowest, it's almost the cheapest employee that I have in that business. But what they are there for is to increase my efficiency and ultimately productivity. Then once I actually have the foundation of operations, I want to pour gas on the fire, right? So then I have fractional CROs, chief revenue officers, that come in and help me determine where are the opportunities to grow revenue in this company, right? And then I look at now creating what we call enterprise value. So this is the last step in this journey. How do I know if I want to scale this business? How do I know if I want to exit this business? Well, now I'm going to take you to the 3 things that I've been asked on every single exit of a business. Number 1, they're going to ask you, what is your EBITDA, your bottom line, your net? They're going to ask you your financial numbers. If you don't know your financial numbers, you don't know what percentage of profitability you have, you don't understand what it fundamentally costs to operate this business, and you're going to sell a business off of 1 or 2 things. Number 1, you're going to sell it off of EBITDA, right? Or you're going to sell it off of a top line revenue stat. Number 2, do you have an operating system? The reason I built the Empire operating system is as I was exiting my businesses, these private equity firms and others wanted to know, what's the playbook? How do we actually operate this? Because if I don't give them the playbook, the system, here's how we do it, then what they're going to ask is, can you come with the business and run it? Number 3, here's the biggest thing, and that's your IP. What actually sets you apart? What is fundamentally different about you? And so we need to be documenting our systems, our processes, but also we have to document how we do things. What's our technology that supports it? If you can build unique technology to this business, you'll get a much larger multiple on the exit. How do you curate your data? What are the things that set you apart from the competition? That's your IP, right? And so those 3 things get asked every single time I've exited a business. And if I check the box of every single one, my revenue's in order, right? I'm making money, I'm profitable. I'm profitable year over year, right? Number 2, I've got a system. Here's the manual, essentially on how to run the business. Number 3, I've got very unique properties inside of this business that make us unique, whether it's technology, it's data, it's systems, it's how we do things, right? Now I've got the recipe for getting the largest potential for exit. And if you have those 3 things that I just talked about, you're more likely to be in that top 2% of businesses that actually sell. Because when you have a system, you have IP, and you know your numbers, you're very, very attractive for acquisition. My very first exit was an unintentional exit. I was just trying to source capital, and some corporate giants came in, kind of behind the scenes, took advantage of me at a level that I didn't even know the game we were playing, And at the last hour, it was like, hey, by the way, this is about what's going to happen to you. And it cost me, it probably cost me in the long run 20 to 30 million that I could have had personally. It was a big, big lesson. And they gave me 24 hours to make a decision. I was outclassed, I was outplayed, I had no idea. I really had no business playing the game that they were playing because I wasn't prepared. And so I'm driving back in the next day. I have to go in and sign some papers, mad and frustrated. And the words of my mother kind of came back, in any low, if you can find gratitude in the moment, it becomes a catalyst for your greatest lessons in life. And I started thinking, I was like, this is interesting. I'm trying to get to a place of positivity. How do I actually see the benefit in what just happened to me? And it dawned on me, they were actually giving me what's in the business realm, in the exiting companies, what was called 7 times multiple on my EBITDA, right? So if I were to work the same amount of hours for the next 7 years doing the exact same thing, and I didn't see any increase or decrease, essentially what they're doing is giving me 7 years of my life back in this moment. Now, I might have wanted 10 or 20 years of my life back, but they're giving me 7. And I found this moment of gratitude on the way back in after one of the worst days of my business career. I thought, you know what? If I could live my life today as if I'd want to live it in 7 years with this revenue, what would my life look like? I started to who gets that blessing in life, right? And then it became the catalyst or the mantra of how I do business. How do I shrink down my time so that instead of living, trying to live 100 lifetimes, and dying with this expectation of giving back later, what if I could actually live 100 lifetimes today in this process of shrinking down time by selling something at an exponential multiple without having to go through the process and then take that capital and go do something massive with it. Capitalism, in its right context, is very serving of the general population, because what it says is may the best service or product delivered in the right way win, right? With the right price. And that part of capitalism is amazing, right? Because at that point, it serves the consumer. My businesses exist to make money, but my businesses should also have an altruistic look at serving the customer and having a greater reach than just the business itself. And to me, that's where I think capitalism in its purest form does the greatest good. There are really 5 phases to business. There's what we call the startup phase. Then we move into perseverance. That's like pre-profit. It's when we're still wearing lots of hats and there's not enough people. We get into viability. That's phase 3. That's when we actually look at the business and it's ready for growth. Then scale, and then lastly, succession. I have a systematic way of pushing the businesses through every phase with complete intention. And that's the problem with most small business owners. Like, you got a guy that he's running a small tech company or a dry cleaner or whatever it is. They will get into what we call perseverance mode, where they're making a little bit of money. And perseverance is you might be profitable 1 month, you might not be profitable next month. You might be profitable for 6 months, and then you might not be, right? And you don't have the right people in the right seats. You don't have the right systems. There's no way to scale it. But what they do is they start taking all their revenue and they start putting it into areas that really shouldn't be invested in until they're truly viable. And they misstep because they don't know the sequencing. What I've realized is there's a sequencing to growing businesses, and it really doesn't matter what the business is. There's a sequencing to it, and if I can actually grow the business properly, hire the right people, create the right governance layers, understand the right KPIs, right, at the right time, then I can systematically get it through that process faster than just about anyone else. I've mastered that, and that's how we grow and run and scale and potentially exit all the businesses. Money, resources of any kind, money specifically, but really resources, really become the greatest revealer of actually what's inside. Most people, they get to speak from their audible voice. Some people get a megaphone and a microphone. And I feel like the money and resources we get it's an amplification system of who we really are. And I remember having a real deep thought when I was making my first good money, thinking, who do I want to be? Yes, I can live a good life. I can up my standard of living, but in the end, it's I want to make sure that this doesn't just serve me, And so I think that money is the ultimate revealer. And I think that as you see people, and they're obtaining this money with greed, you just find more greed. They take advantage of more people. For instance, it's you take somebody like Elon Musk. Elon's goals is he wants to change how we navigate not just our globe, but the entire planetary system. And the more money he makes, the more it reveals his real desire, which is to really change how we navigate everything, and it's from cars to rockets to trains and it's it really just kind of reveals who Elon was. Well, if Elon was sitting there broke, you might have all these dreams and aspirations, but Elon wealthy is showing that's really who he is. Life success, to go back just a step, I have amazing parents, and I was super fortunate to grow up in an environment where my father was an entrepreneur, but also my mother was an entrepreneur. Both of them started businesses. Both of them ran successful businesses. And I learned so much about just the life operating system through them that I was super fortunate. I feel like I had a jump start where a lot of people did not, and it wasn't really my college education or formal education anyway that led me to where I am. It was the life education, and really just some basic principles that were huge for me. Is I had a father who understood and had a great relationship with fear. He left his corporate job to try to pursue what was his dream. And I watched him do it. And sometimes he was successful. Sometimes we were extremely poor as a family, and sometimes we were wealthy. And I watched that. And he also was also present in my life. And so I saw this great dad who also had the ups and downs of the entrepreneurial journey. And so for me, while he probably looks back on those periods of time and says, and he probably says to himself, I never want to go back to those low moments. I look at those low moments and I think, what's the worst that can happen if I go all in? I end up spending time with my family. I end up having a good relationship with my kids, right? So he really had a great relationship with fear and taught me and gave me a great gift. And that is to understand, what to truly fear, right? Like, the fear of loss is really not something we should fear. Sometimes in loss, it brings us our greatest opportunity. The greatest times I ever had with my father was when we were at the lowest point financially, right? So to me, it's just like watching a person navigate that and experiencing that really helped me deal with fear. The second thing that he taught me is really ego is the enemy. My dad is a quiet leader who is not going to be an alpha, beat his chest. You're never going to find him on social media touting his wares. He was a guy who led from the back, who was never afraid of picking up the shovel himself, who was quiet, who was a leader in his own right, very demonstrative, but in a very quiet sense. And his actions and his results always far outspoke his words or the volume of his voice. The thing I learned from my mother, though, was gratitude. And that, I had suffered quite a bit of loss in my younger life. I lost a sister, then later lost a brother. And my mom, just a very strong, an emotionally aware person, constantly bring me back towards this point of gratitude. She would say, Eddie, tell me about, I would struggle with the loss of my sister. And she would say, Eddie, let's talk about your sister. Let's talk about your favorite day. Let's talk about the favorite toy she had. Let's talk about what was your favorite moment. And then she would help me rehearse gratitude, even in loss. And some of the greatest lessons I've ever learned in my life was to be afraid of the things that you should intentionally be afraid of. To remind myself constantly that ego actually is the enemy. Ego actually prevents me from getting where I want to go. And if I can find gratitude in the low moments, they become catalysts for massive growth.